simulation.
Do you believe in free will?
So that's also a difficult to answer question. And the reason is there's two layers to this. One is, do you believe in unpredictability? And then the other one is, do you believe in free will? So I for sure believe in unpredictability. And so the idea of unpredictability is just the question, not do you have free will, but is there any entity in the universe that could ever predict what you're actually going to do, right? And to me, that's actually practically already, I'll turn that off. To me, that's actually already, unpredictability is already good news, right? And so I firmly believe in that. And the reason is that any physical theories that we've come up with, whether it's classical mechanics or quantum mechanics, are in fact unpredictable. So in classical mechanics, it arises because systems of many bodies are very sensitive to initial conditions, because like eventually molecules hit one another, and if this molecule had been only a little bit further over to that side, it'll hit it differently, and before you know it, one day later there will be a storm somewhere where there wasn't.
Right.
Okay,
right.
So that's one reason. But even in quantum mechanics, actually, because again the Born theorem that measurement outcomes are unpredictable, even our theory of how we think measurements really happen says the same thing. It agrees with the Born prediction. And so the measurements may have a specific outcome, but that outcome is still essentially unpredictable. And the reason is that the detector is a very many degree of freedom system that quantum localizes in a more or less unpredictable fashion. So you can't tell whether it would have gone to the left or to the right, even though it specifically does go to one side or to the other side. And so quantum mechanics also has that unpredictability. So I'm very convinced that we are completely unpredictable. Now, being unpredictable is not the same as free will, because free will also implies that there's some kind of a conscious entity that actually can reason about itself. And there's so you could, for instance, postulate that we have sensory information that comes in, some of it gets stored in memory, but then we can actually recall these memories and reason about them, or have perceive them. And we understand that, hey, I must be there, because even though when I close my eyes, I'm not seeing you, I can actually imagine you with your glasses and your shirt and everything in front of me when I close my eyes. And so that fact shows that it's not just purely perception. There's something there, right, that's ticking. And that's sort of one way to think about an ingredient of consciousness. And so I would make the argument that if you're unpredictable and consciousness really exists, then we probably have free will. But I couldn't answer that with certainty. But the unpredictability question, I'm willing to say I'm totally sure.
I'm thinking about, like you mentioned, that if we were in a simulation, the simulator would have to interact with the system.
Yes, that alone would already mess it up.
Right, and that would, I'm trying to imagine like a universal wave function collapse.
Yes, exactly. And so from that point of view, so if you believe in quantum mechanics, I think you could actually make the argument that if there is an entity outside, right, that is interacting with the system, that interaction already will mess up the system, even in a way that entity can't control, right? And we'll see how often it continues before she realizes, no, not yet. So let's see, where was my train of thought? So if an entity actually were to interrogate the system because of quantum mechanics, right, that would already perturb the system and change it enough that then something different is going to happen. So I think that combination, but there's a lot of ifs still in there, right? So you have to actually, for instance, believe that quantum mechanics is really a theory that accurately describes how everything works. And as you know, there are a lot of people who don't want to buy that. There are still many people around, even some physicists, who think there must be some kind of realist theory underneath all of this that is completely deterministic, and so then these kinds of things can't happen. And if everything were truly deterministic, then maybe then the free will question is not as obvious again, right? But I would say I believe enough in quantum mechanics, and even if that fails, all the other theories that we've come up with always have that sensitivity thing, that they are sensitive to conditions or to measurement or to anything like that. And so I think it's a pretty good bet, but I don't know for sure. Whereas the simpler question of unpredictability, I'm pretty sure of.
That's a fascinating point I've never heard before, that perhaps we are truly a simulation, but until there's an observer, like someone waiting for the result, then it's like for someone inside the simulation, it's normal. It's like...
and whatever. Not only that, and you wouldn't be able to predict anything, because the rules of this, if we are a simulation, the rules of the simulation are classical mechanics at a bigger level and quantum field theory at some lower level. But all of these are theories that are inherently eventually unpredictable.
Right.
And so therefore, so another way of putting it is that if you have an overall system and you have a subsystem in it, that subsystem, by interrogating already some other subsystem, already changes the way that subsystem behaves. Therefore, that subsystem is unpredictable. Therefore, you could never tell precisely what I am going to do in the future. And therefore, from that point of view, I have free will as far as you're concerned, right? And again, if an outside entity that has to obey quantum mechanics is subject to the same, then it's even true in that sense, right? If there's an outside entity. But we don't know for sure whether quantum mechanics is really the ultimate theory and so forth. And that's why that's a question that if you forced me to, I would say, yeah, probably we have free will. But I can't say for sure because we don't know whether these theories are correct or not. And so the only thing I'm willing to say is that we are unpredictable. And that I'm pretty sure.